guys, it's Jasma and today we're making wonton. This is a traditional Chinese food that is usually eaten as a breakfast, but of course you can eat it any time of the day you want. It is really similar to dumplings, which we usually eat, except the wrapper is a lot thinner and it's a square instead of a circle. There are less vegetables inside of it, and there are lots of different names for this in different parts of China, but they're actually the exact same thing. The way to make these are actually really simple, so once you know how to do it, you don't have to go to a restaurant in order to eat it. And there are many different fillings, but today we're making a ground pork and shrimp filling, which is really tasty and one of my personal favorites. So let's get started. For the ingredients you will need 150 grams of fresh shrimp peeled and chopped, 150 grams of ground pork, 50 grams of chopped green onion, 1 teaspoon of minced ginger, 1 tablespoon of egg white, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of ground pepper, 200 grams of wonton wrappers. And now for the soup, for 1 bowl you will need 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, 20 grams of iceberg lettuce, 1 teaspoon of green onion, and 1 teaspoon of roasted sesame seeds. First, let's look at our wonton wrappers. So you can see it's small, it's square, and it's really thin. And I prepared another type, which is slightly bigger. It's a little wider, and I'm not going to be using this today, but I will have another video using this type of wrappers making turkey wonton. If you're not going to be using the wonton wrappers, make sure to wrap it in plastic wrap and store it in the fridge so it does not dry out. I'm going to cover my wonton wrappers with a damp, clean towel while we're preparing the filling so it does not dry out. And for the filling, I have some shrimp here today. So what you need to do is peel it. You can see this is a pretty big shrimp. I used only about 8 of it and it's already 150 grams. So this has already been cleaned. The intestines are cleaned out. So instead of chopping it into the same size as the ground pork, what you want to do is chop it into nice and big pieces until it looks something like this. Now grab a big bowl. I'm going to add in the shrimp and the ground pork, and this is the same amount. I'm just going to add it into the bowl. And for the pork, you don't need to buy really lean pork. You could buy medium lean pork. Now we add in the minced ginger, the oyster sauce, the egg white, the salt and the pepper, and finally the sesame oil. Once all the ingredients except the green onions are in, we're going to mix this in one direction with a spoon, or you can also use your hands if you want, until all the spices and sauces are mixed into the meat and it's kind of sticky. After about a minute, the meat has mixed in with the spices and sauces, and it's kind of sticky now, so we're going to add in the green onion. And just mix that in as well. You don't need to mix this for too long. Once all the ingredients are combined and it's quite sticky, we can start to make our wontons. You're going to need a flat plate and a bowl of water. Now while we're making this filling, you can notice that we did not add any cornstarch. Some people add cornstarch to their filling to make sure that it does not come out while it's cooking, but even though we don't have any cornstarch, I can promise that it's not going to leak while it's cooking. So to make our wontons, grab a wrapper and a really small spoon. Just scoop a tiny bit of the filling. You don't need too much here. Grab a little bit of the filling and place it into the center of the wrapper. Make sure you add a little shrimp into it. And now to fold it, hold it like a diamond. We're going to fold the corner up to the top. It does not have to be overlapping. So once it looks something like this, flip it over. Take a little dab of water onto each corner. When you're dabbing the water, you want to dab a little on top of the corner and a little on the bottom of the other one. And now we're just going to fold it over. Make sure you squeeze it nice and tight. And even if you can see the filling from here, I can promise you that it's not going to leak. So now just do this to all of your filling. If you can still see the filling after you have made the wontons, you don't need to close it up or anything like that. It's not going to leak while it's cooking because when we were stirring this, it's really sticky, so it's not going to leak everywhere. I've used up all of my wonton filling. I made 50 wontons in total, so this should be enough to serve 3 people. And now we're ready to cook it. We're now ready to start to cook our wontons. Now before we do that, I have already prepared some bone soup as the soup for our wonton. But if you don't have a soup that you already made, you could just use the soup that you used to cook the wontons as the soup. You want to prepare a pretty big pot to give the wonton space to cook. And you want to have enough water in the pot so that while it's cooking, it won't stick to each other. Since the wonton takes so little time to cook, we're going to add all the ingredients into the bowl before we actually cook it. While the water is boiling, I'm going to prepare the sauce. So I'm using a soup today, but if you're just using the soup that you used to cook the wonton, you could also add in a little bit of soy sauce to make the color prettier. So I'm going to add in the salt and the pepper and the sesame oil. Now I'm going to add a little bit of lettuce, and this is iceberg lettuce here. So after it's washed, you don't need to chop this up, you could just rip it up. And since we can eat this raw, you don't need to cook it. I'm just going to add that in as well. You also need to prepare a cup of cold water. The water is now boiling. And I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of salt. And this is going to prevent the wontons from sticking to each other. Now I'm going to add in the wontons. And be careful not to let the water splash on you. If you drop it in from the sides, it will prevent you from being splashed by the boiling water. Once you drop in the wontons, give it a little stir. You don't need to put on the lid because it does not take too long to cook. Make sure you keep a close eye on this while it's cooking or else it might overflow. Once the water has boiled, I'm going to add in about a half cup of cold tap water. I'm going to let it boil again, and once all the wontons flow to the top, I'm going to take it out. I'm going to add my soup into the bowl with the sauce. Now again, if you're using the water that you used to cook the wonton, you could add in some soy sauce. I'm going to give it a little stir, and once they're all floating to the top, that means it's cooked. So we're just going to wait until the water starts to boil again. See, starting to boil. You want to strain away as much of the soup as you can while you're taking it out. And then just drop it into the bowl with your soup. Once I've taken out the wontons, I'm going to sprinkle on some green onions and white sesame seeds for garnish. Now we are done! That's how you make shrimp and pork wonton. I've already ate a few because this does look really good and also smells really nice. If you learn how to make this yourself, you can make it for yourself anytime you want. If you don't finish a batch of raw wonton, you can keep it in the freezer and take out some when you want to eat it again. But be cautious about this because frozen wonton breaks a lot easier than fresh wonton because the wrapper is really thin. So you want to make sure you have enough water in your pot. And make sure to keep a close eye on it while it's cooking. And you don't want to overcook it because the wrapper will break. As soon as all the wonton floats to the top, it is ready. In the future, I'm going to be making some more turkey wontons, so stay tuned for that. Now I'm going to get back to eating this. I hope you can try this out. Thanks for watching and see you guys next time. Bye!